So our topic today is how to start a product decorating business. My name is Jimmy Lamb, Manager of Education for Sawgrass Technologies, and I'll be your host here for our session. So let's get rolling. Sublimation is going to be my main focus. I'm going to talk to you about a couple of other things besides sublimation, but sublimation is going to be my main focus. So let's start off focusing on sublimation, because sublimation itself is diversification on a grand scale. Everything that you see in that picture was sublimated, every bit of it. And it was all done basically using the same printer and the same heat press, with the exception of the water bottle. The water bottle there, we had to use a different heat press. Obviously, we cannot put that into a flat press. Does not work very well. You can try it, but it's just not going to work for you. But the reality is, when you look at all these different things that you can do with sublimation, it's incredible, all the different products. I started my decoration career as an embroiderer, and with embroidery, we could put logos on apparel, pretty much apparel, and pretty much just apparel, okay? Get the point? We really couldn't do a lot of other things like plaques and awards and those types of things, promotional products and whatnot, okay? We did apparel. And the reality, because of how long it took to apply a logo to something, we typically only stuck with smaller logos on things like the left chest area of a polo shirt, very popular for embroidery, and baseball caps, okay, that type of thing. It couldn't do a lot else. But the customers were buying a whole lot of other things. So the reality for me is, I was very limited in that particular process. But then when you look at sublimation, you have just a tremendous amount, hundreds of different things that you can do, so you can tap into a lot of different markets and provide a lot of different types of products to any given customer. So that is a huge thing for that. Now, sublimation is an HD decorating application. HD is in high def. And so if someone gives you a high definition image, you can reproduce it with sublimation, something that you cannot do with a lot of other digital printing processes. So you definitely want to keep that in mind as we go. So what exactly is sublimation? Well, it's a digital printing process that works at a molecular level. Wow. That's sounding kind of scary, didn't it? And in fact, it really is more about chemistry than it is just about printing. Now, typically when you're talking about printing, you're talking about a process where ink is added to the surface of a substrate. And we use the term substrate to refer to the blank products that we actually decorate. So you're applying it to the surface in most cases, such as screen printing, direct-to-garment printing, offset printing, etc. You will have to rely on an ink that will bond with the surface, and in order to do that, there are chemical additives put into different types of inks for them to bond to different types of surfaces, something called a binder. So the reality is, one ink doesn't work on all surfaces, just kind of like paint as well. You have different types of paint for different surfaces. And that's something to keep in mind when you're looking at digital printing processes, is there's no one process that works on every type of surface, okay? Because every surface is a little bit different in its physical characteristics. Now, sublimation doesn't rely on any binders, because sublimation bonds molecularly. That's hard to say. Because sublimation bonds at that molecular level, the reality is it's not relying on binders and chemical additives to make it happen. By the same token, it doesn't bond to everything. Because of the molecular bonding, it only works with polymers and polyesters. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment, so don't make that sound limiting, okay? Because it kind of sounds that way, but it's not really. Okay. So another unique thing is, because we're bonding at a molecular level, we're not really applying it to the surface. Most things that you apply ink to the surface, you can scratch that ink off. Sublimation bonds at a subsurface level. Okay, so it actually penetrates into the surface instead of on the surface. Now, to make sublimation work, we have to go through a few steps. The first thing is that we're going to print out our image using sublimation dye, and it is dye. Dye is different from ink, okay? But we call it ink, and everybody's happy with that. We'll just leave it at that, okay? But definitely dyes are different from pigment inks, and pigment inks are what are used on most of the decorated products in our industry that are non-polymer, okay? So we'll leave it at that. So with sublimation, we're actually going to print out a sheet of transfer paper. Now, just keep in mind that paper is temporary. That paper is not a decal. Sublimation is not a decal. But we are going to print with an inkjet printer equipped with sublimation dye onto sublimation transfer paper. We're going to apply that paper to the surface of whatever we want to decorate, and we're going to put that product along with the paper into a heat press, close it down. We're going to apply approximately 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and the reason I say approximately is because there's a few variations of some products. Pretty much the majority of the products are 400 degrees Fahrenheit. We're also going to apply pressure. Now, the combination of heat and pressure causes two very unique things to happen. Number one, the sublimation dye itself turns into a gas. Number two, the polymer or polyester surface that we're working with actually is composed of like multiple small like microcells, okay? And those cells basically open up and receive the sublimation gas into them. And then when we remove the product from the heat press, first thing we're going to do is we're going to take that paper that had that ink on it, we're going to rip it away, pull it away, and throw it away. This is not a decal process. The ink will have already transferred over. And as it cools down, it encapsulates the ink into the surface instead on top of the surface. So when we take a product that's been sublimated and we try to scratch the surface and scratch the ink off, you cannot scratch it off because it's in the surface instead of on the surface. Okay, I think we're all clear on that. Okay, the result is a high-resolution permanent coloration that will not peel or crack. And in the case of apparel, it will not peel, crack, or fade when laundered. So that's a pretty important aspect. Okay, it adds to the value of the process because of that. So sublimation, simple, fast, and profitable. That timer of the heat press is about 1 minute, by the way, that we were just talking about. And you have a lot of great advantages here. Okay, number one, it's a quick setup. You know, I know enough about screen printing this, you know, to make the choice not to do it. And you know, screen printing has a pretty long setup. Embroidery can have an extremely long setup depending on the type of job. With sublimation, we don't really have millions of colors, but we do have hundreds of thousands of colors, but millions of colors sounds good. Okay. The reality is you cannot count all the colors we can do. That's pretty important because if you're an embroiderer, you are limited to the number of needles on your machine. You know, in screen printing, as far as just solid colors, you're limited to the number of stations that you have on your press. Okay. And then you can play with that and expand it a little bit. But the reality is you don't do big images that have, you know, hundreds of colors in them. Okay, it just doesn't work out. Very low production cost. On average, sublimation ink is a penny per square inch or less. I'll be honest with you, with the new printers, it's considerably less, but a penny per square inch is easy math. No special skills required other than learning how to do it. No color separations are needed. We just use basic flattened artwork. And it's an ideal short-run production solution, meaning that if you just need to do a few, you can, okay? With a lot of processes, it doesn't make sense to do less than 100 or 2 dozen or 5 dozen or whatever, depending on how you're set up. But yeah, we can do onesies and twosies all day long because we don't have that big setup, okay? So it's easy to turn around something small, okay? So in other words, you can do 1, you can do 100, whatever you want to do with sublimation. Now, I mentioned the polymer connection. Sounds very limiting because you think polymers, gee, all we can do is work with rubbery stuff. No, not at all. When you take these types of products, for example, if you take a sheet of coated metal, it has a polymer coating on it. Sublimation will not bond to metal. It bonds into the coating, okay? But you cannot tell the coating's there by just touching the metal. It feels like metal, looks like metal, but it actually has a coating on it, okay? So everything that you see in these pictures here, they either have a coating or they're a natural polymer or polyester type of product. You know, here that's metal, has a coating. That's a hard fiber board. That's acrylic. Definitely there's a coating in that. You know, so, you know, this one's wood, has a coating. So we have all kinds of products out there. You know, wood, glass, acrylic, slate, steel, metal, okay? All these different things, but they all have some type of coating on them so that sublimation will bond to it, okay? But just keep in mind, there's hundreds and hundreds of things that have been manufactured for that specific purpose and work great with sublimation. So the doors are really wide open to that, okay? Now, one of the things too, just to keep in mind here, sublimation is polymer and polyester. Now, you may be saying, hey, listen, that's great stuff, but really what I want to do is print some cotton t-shirts. If you want to do cotton t-shirts, we have another product called Chromoblast. Chromoblast is not sublimation. Chromoblast is a pigment ink. It's basically the same kind of ink you find in a direct-to-garment printer. The process looks and feels the same, we're going to load up an inkjet printer with the Chromoblast ink. We're going to print it on the Chromoblast transfer paper. We're going to put it under a heat press with the garment that we want to decorate at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, sounds really familiar, right? For about a minute. And in this case, the ink will transfer from the paper onto the surface of the cotton. Okay, and we also, because we sell our own unique transfer paper for that ink, the ink and the paper themselves are engineered together. So it gives it more vibrancy with color, and it gives it a more permanent bonding as well. So if you want to do cotton products, cotton t-shirts, sweatshirts, those things like that, that would be the ink that you would use. But it's really designed to work with cotton fibers. Sublimation works with polymers and polyesters. Sublimation will not bond with cotton. But the thing is it goes way beyond apparel because of the fact that we have all these other products that have been created specifically for sublimation. So it opens doors to many different things. Now, a neat thing about sublimation, as I've been saying, it's HD, high def, okay? And that means we can do some really high quality imaging with our products. That means you can do high def photos. Now, some of you may be thinking, I really don't care about photos. I'm going to be doing a bunch of corporate graphics or whatever. But you should care about photos because, first of all, I mean, there's an entire photo industry out there that you can tap into. And believe it or not, things like wedding portraits are being done with sublimation. Reproductions are used in museums and things like that are being done with sublimation because it's really that good if the image is of the highest quality. But you're also going to find that being able to put photos onto things can go a long way in a lot of different markets. For example, if you do personalization, you can't beat doing personalized products to have a picture of a person or a pet or a special event or something to that effect, okay? You just can't beat that. And it raises the perceived value, which means that you can make more money, all right? I've even, used a lot of photos in the promotional products marketplace. Now you think, promotional products is all about, corporate logos and brands and those kind of things, but you can use a picture to tell a story. And a lot of times a picture will tell you far more about a brand, what it is and what it's for, than any logo or any tagline. And when you can start finding ways to incorporate those pictures in, that makes things huge, okay, absolutely huge. And now you have the ability to do it with sublimation. And it puts you above a lot of other people, especially in the promotional products marketplace. You go into that marketplace, it was just huge. There's a ton of money being spent there. Now you have something a little different, different edge that you can add in if you're creative, okay? So keep that in mind. That can make a difference. Now, as I was mentioning about apparel, just real quick, again, sublimation, bonds of polyester and polymers, not with cotton, okay? You would use a pigment ink designed to go onto cotton products if you want to do cotton products. Now, in the world of sublimation, we're finding that the polyester apparel products are huge right now, absolutely huge. And the ones that are really in demand are what we call poly performance. And the poly performance are the ones that have the moisture wicking capability. And moisture wicking means that when someone sweats, it pulls the moisture away from their skin. In the summer, that's a cooling, evaporative type of effect. In the winter, it keeps you from being, cold and clammy so bad, And we can thank companies like Under Armour for making this mainstream. And in fact, you can use Under Armour in your marketing because when you talk about poly-performance garments and people don't know exactly what that is, you can reference, just like Under Armour makes, okay? Now, that helps you establish your price point. You want to keep that in mind. These types of garments are at a higher level of quality and a higher level of performance than a standard t-shirt. Because what you're looking on the screen, you see a t-shirt. And you got to be careful when you use the term t-shirt. A lot of times you devalue the product because people have bought t-shirts that were like dirt cheap. I live on the coast of North Carolina. Over here on the beach, we have stores that will sell 5 t-shirts for $10. So if people come here on vacation, they get 5 car wash racks for $10. Yes, 5 car wash racks because they're not usually very good t-shirts, but they kind of forget that. They go home and they have this mentality now that a t-shirt's worth $2. And a poly performance t-shirt blank is at least $5 for a really good quality. You're probably paying about $5. Okay, so you already got a high price point on the blank, but it's not even in the same category as some of these paper thin 50/50s. Because when we talk about poly performance, we're talking about moisture wicking, number one. Number two, if we sublimate it, the sublimation will not crack, peel, or fade when laundered. It will outlast the shirt. Okay, it's a better made shirt. It's a higher quality. It's more durable. The shirt itself will last a long time. So you're talking about a totally different product than just a t-shirt. You got to be careful because when you use words like t-shirt, people suddenly have a lower perceived value of the product. So it's always important that you position your products the right way with the words that you use. This is a performance product. This is performance apparel or poly performance. And then again, if you use the term Under Armour, everyone knows Under Armour starts at about $25 for a t-shirt and goes up. So that helps you, again, position your product the right way. Just kind of keep that in mind when you're out here getting ready to sell. By the way, you should know, if you don't know this already, because as soon as I say polyester, people think of slick, silky, stretchy shirts that a lot of people don't like, okay? But the reality is there's spun polyester as well that looks and feels like cotton, but it's still polyester. And so, keep that in mind for those customers that don't really like that slick, silky kind of look, okay? All right, so bottom line, sublimation opens the door to a wide range of products, applications, and markets. Again, everything you see on that screen was sublimated, okay? And everything on that screen was sublimated using the same printer. The only exception to that might be, because I shrunk it down, this mural right here. Okay, that mural is kind of big. That's right here in the here it is, sorry. Mouse was on the wrong screen. So that mural right there, I didn't do that mural. So it's possible those mural panels are fairly large. They may have been done on a larger printer, but a standard basic sublimation printer did everything on here, okay? And the same heat press could have been used except for the coffee mugs and the water bottles, which are round, so they would have been done with a different, heat press or heat application. Other than that, that just gives you an idea of all the things you can do with your sublimation printer.